the total for the project. So these are based on historic data, and a few of these items are still being refined, such as right-of-way, which we'll be updating when we get into the detailed modeling, as well as some of the easements, permitting, and other things that will be going in the next stage. And now for the first intersection, we'll be starting at the very north. So Dairy Pack. So a few key features here are, you see the shared use path on all four corners, the segment 1 tying in with the separated bike lane that transitions to a shared corner on the southeast corner, and also the truck aprons to
sorry, Tom.
To slow turning movements for the major vehicles. So just to get a bit of traffic calming as well at this intersection. So extending south from here, actually, we're going to show the cost next. I'm ready for that next one. All right, so this is typical of what you'll be seeing for intersection and segments as we go through this. So we've got the construction cost and the utility relocation associated with the construction itemized, and then a contingency on those two items. And then separate of that, we've got, based on that previous slide we'd showed, the anticipated right-of-way acquisition area, in addition, the estimated engineering and design costs. So we'll definitely be, on the next stage, we'll be refining the grading from the east side for the most part. So we'll be getting into what the actual easements will look like, but this is where we're at today. And now extending south from there is segment 1. So this is an example of what the section looks like. We've kept the 4 travel lanes, but we've narrowed the lane width where possible, and mostly touching that east curb line to introduce the 2-way separated bike lane and a separate sidewalk. So this is typical what will continue down to Boulevard. All right, so here's that plan view. So you can see on the north end, I think the highlight is we're avoiding the existing drainage ditch. So that's where we will be needing to acquire some right-of-way just to avoid those impacts. That's one of the trade-offs, but also keeping it as tight as possible to avoid the existing stream and culvert crossing as well, and introducing an additional truck apron where we're going to have a lot of turning movements for trucks. So this is that breakdown of the segment. You can see that parcel at the existing drainage ditch. And that's the one impacted on this segment. And then here's that segment cost breakdown. As you can see, this is more significant area than others in terms of right-of-way take, but that is to minimize the additional drainage cost of relocation of all those recently constructed drainage facilities. All right, so segment 2 abuts this Loop 10 to Oneida. And so this is where we discuss some of the existing constraints, where we have the right-of-way is about 50 feet typically, and does include some minor parking removal. But we've moved from what you saw previously, the sidewalk to the west side to respond to the existing pedestrian travel patterns, and as well as the existing constraints of that structural bridge and overcrossing. So here's a plan view of that. I think we want to note that we've shown a few new mid-block or enhanced crossings, which will be assessed at the next stage, as well as relocated and enhanced the bus stop at the existing northeast corner of Oneida. And then you can see that right-of-way impacts are to a majority of the parcels along this section, though many already had encroachment issues before we introduced the facilities. And then this is a summary of the anticipated cost for segment 2. All right, so here's a look at the intersection of Oneida. So we've tightened the corners and introduced truck aprons for additional traffic calming, as well as protection for the crossings. So the proposed sidewalk connects to the existing on the south side of Oneida and Waterworks. So that's on the left side of this image. And so we note that there's a future shared use path connection to Chase. So we did consider it as a tie-in option, but went with what was best for the current existing conditions and can easily accommodate that when that comes along in the future. And you can see the bus stop in a little bit more zoomed in of a view on that northeast corner. And here's that intersection cost estimate. Now I'm going to hand it over to Savannah to pick up.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, so next is segment 3, which goes from Oneida Street to Boulevard. On this segment, we'll move the sidewalk back to the east side of the street to limit the impacts on the west side, and we'll keep the edge of pavement maintained generally on the west side. So next slide. This segment is pretty long, so here's just like a snapshot of what it will generally look like. It's pretty representative of the corridor. There will be a new mid-block crossing with an RFB that's in between Atlanta Avenue and Cleveland Avenue. And then we also wanted to note here that the railroad coordination will be done at the next design stage, but the current plan is to extend concrete panels at the railroad crossing, which is shown to the left of Cleveland Avenue, to accommodate the proposed sidewalk and bikeway, which will create a safer crossing, and we we'll potentially be adding bike and ped arms there as well.
Savannah, I'm sorry. What are y'all doing with Tracy Street? Is that in this segment off screen? It would be to the right. Tracy Street is between Oneida and I guess Athens Avenue.
So,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, if it's, you said it's between Oneida and Athens.
Yes, it's Tracy Street.
Okay, and it's on the east side.
West side.
Yes. What? Wait, let me think. What's east and what's? It's the west. Yes.
West side.
Oh, it's on the west side. Then it would most likely have essentially just the curb lines tightened up. We can, we've provided the full concept roll plot plans to the Athens-Clarke County, which shows the entire segment or the entire corridor. And I can maybe pull up a screenshot of that later to share on this presentation. But if it's on the other side of the street, it would most likely, if you can see what Nantahala Avenue is happening right there, how there's just, we're showing curb line. Because at some of these intersections, there's just an edge of pavement. There's not an actual curb. If it's on the west side, then it would be like that. Because for this segment, all of the facilities are on the east side of the street. We're pretty much not touching that west side.
So if this becomes, I just want to say, if this becomes a major bike thoroughfare to go, across the loop and out north of Athens, anybody west of there who's riding down Boulevard is going to then turn left on Winburn, which becomes Tracy. That's going to be sort of the shortcut that I think people would naturally take because there's no other way through unless you go all the way down to Barber and then kind of have to double back a little bit. So that is an important street, though. If this is built out, it'll see a lot of informal traffic.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, please continue. I think we'll have more questions.
Oh no, that was great. That's good to know. So I appreciate you guys bringing that up. So let's see. I think we were on the railroad crossing. Just like note that we will get into that a lot more in the next design phase and plan on making it as safe as possible for bikes and peds to cross there. So we can go to the right-of-way impacts. The impacts for segment 3 are, as mentioned, all on the east side of the corridor and then also surrounding the Boulevard intersection. And just to note that a lot of these are fairly minor in terms of depth and are also subject to change since we do not have an official survey yet. Okay, so for the cost, here's the estimate for segment 3. Give you guys a moment to review. The length of segment 3 is about 2,400 feet, if that helps in any way to give you a sense of the cost. So now I'll turn it back over to Sarah.
All right, thank you, Savannah. So here is the concept for the Boulevard intersection. And this intersection presents a unique opportunity along the corridor because it's residential, it abuts the Boulevard Woods Park. So the proposed design is to raise the intersection. And you can see that there's different colors. It's going from your standard asphalt to this this red color, which is just shown for illustrative purposes. You could use whatever approved color and material for this intersection, but it could be something like a brick, a red brick intersection. And what this does is it provides a nice transition for bicyclists to go from on-street facilities to the off-street separated bike lane. And it really helps visually kind of integrate the neighborhood into the park, and it makes this a space where, you know, pedestrians and bicyclists are very prioritized. And it provides additional opportunity for landscaping, for placemaking at this intersection. Okay, and here's the cost estimate for this intersection. And again, we will be showing these in the summarized table at the end of the presentation. Okay, so segment 4, to preface, I just want to reiterate that the focus was providing off-street facilities from Dairy Pack to Boulevard, but the preferred design does employ certain interventions that will improve safety and provide traffic calming on this segment as well. So segment 4 largely retains the existing roadway profile. On-street parking is formalized by adding curb extensions and strategic locations along the corridor. So you can see that it requires removing 3 on-street parking spaces that are, of the ones that exist, that are actually up to code and considered safe for pedestrian and bicyclists. It would only remove 3 of those. Here's the plan view. You can see that there's only colored portions of this segment every once in a while because we'd be keeping the existing asphalt otherwise. So there's 4 areas where we're proposing curb extensions, and then there's a proposed mid-block crossing at Barrow Street with a rectangular rapid flash beacon. This is the parcel map, and you can see that this segment has the most number of parcels with existing right-of-way encroachment issues. And that's because the existing sidewalk for a lot of the segment is only partially within the right-of-way. The new impacts, right-of-way impacts, are limited to just 1 parcel, and that's the result of the mid-block crossing proposed at Barrow Street. And here's the cost breakdown for this segment. This segment is much shorter than the one that Savannah just proposed. It's only 1,600 feet long. So for segment 4, we also explored the idea of potentially continuing those off-street facilities for bicyclists via a shared use path. We have not moved past the exploratory phase, so you won't see any cost estimates for this concept. The cost estimates in the summary table at the end will be the ones that I just presented for the preferred design, but we just wanted to go ahead and explore it because that was part of the initial concept exploration as well. So you can see it's somewhat similar. It also has the 4 areas of curb extensions. However, in certain instances, the footprint of that curb extension had to get a little bit longer to provide adequate space for bicyclists to safely shift kind of left to right as they are moving in and out of those curb extensions. And then compared to the concept I just showed you, this exploratory one, because of those longer curb extensions, it would require one additional parking space that is currently safe and up to code to be removed. This is the parcel map. Obviously, there's much more impact with this concept than with the preferred design, but nearly all of the ones that would be impacted already have an encroachment issue. And there's no cost estimate, as I said, for this preferred design. I'm going to pass it back to Tom to cover the summary costs.
Thanks, sir. So this slide shows the combined cost for the entire project. So based on a sum of all the tables that we've showed you previously on the slides. So again, these costs are preliminary and we're going to continue to refine them, but we feel pretty good about these numbers. And even though there's still some important details to be determined and coordination required. So I'll let you look at these and then I'll hand it over to Stephen to discuss funding strategy.
Great. Thanks, Tom. We can keep it on here for a minute if y'all want to look at it. This just really breaks down everything. And like we've mentioned, we will send out the PowerPoint, probably an updated version with a couple things tweaked. So to address some of those comments real quick in the chat about how we next vote on this, I agree. Maybe lessons learned from Riverbend, that this is more of a presentation Q&A, and then we send the PowerPoint out. Y'all can review it on your own, and then if we can come back with a special called session before the middle of next month, so we can have a vote on the recommended option. That might be the best way to tackle this. Yeah, let's jump to the next slide here. So the funding strategy, we added this slide to give some perspective on how this project fits into, I guess, existing funding for the rest of Athens in Motion. Notice that as it stands, we've got, you know, the existing projects that have already been voted on listed here. So the Cherokee Road multi-use now, Jefferson Road multi-use. We have Riverbend in here, that will be voted on actually next week. We also realize that Riverbend's sort of up in the air on what they decide. So we've got a number of versions of this slide that could change based on the CDO that passes or doesn't pass, or whatever happens with Riverbend. So either way, it looks like there will be enough funding in there to cover multiple different options here for Barber, and maybe in the near future we can get into some of those other cost estimates for the different options, if that's something y'all want to pursue with the vote. So, but either way, what it looks like is currently we'd have before Barber, we have about 6.5 million available within pedestrian funds, and we'd have about 5.2 available within bikes. And so even with a 50-50 split, that leaves us money in both pots for additional projects, which can probably roll into our, upcoming task for this upcoming year, which is kind of prioritizing the next set of bike and ped projects and within tier 1 projects. So that's a question. That's a task for a little bit later, but it does look like there's enough money here to kind of for a few different options. So one thing I would point out before we jump on is if you all remember when Cherokee was approved earlier this month, they only approved design funds to go toward the Cherokee multi-use, and they said that they're kind of getting rid of the earmarked allocation for construction within the T-SPOS funds. So they're expecting that this would be a TAD funded construction project. So if there was a question there of why this is only $142,000, that's not how much it would cost to build a multi-use trail on Cherokee. That is just design. And I can answer any questions on this one when we can always jump back to the budget slide a little later too. Okay, so I want to turn it over to Ronnie to talk a little bit about the next steps, and then we can open it up for questions and answers and go back through the chat to catch those that had already been posted.
Well, thank you for your patience and attention to this. I know it's a lot of information. For Barber Street project, our next steps, we will include additional steps for a special called meeting for your vote if we did not conclude with a vote today. And following that, we will have a 2-week public engagement at minimum. It's planned for the end of March and through some of April. SPLOST committees, based on the funding, they will have to review and make that recommendation as well. We're looking at March for that one. And the agenda currently is in the April-May cycle with potential May 4th vote and approval for a concept on Barber Street. Like Stephen said, the other projects, the 2 other projects that has been approved as a multi-use path projects on Cherokee and on Jefferson River Road, they're both are starting. The design effort has been put together. Now that we have funding approved, we are slowly but surely moving into the design phase, and we'll be moving a lot quicker and getting more updates to you guys as every meeting or in future meetings for those projects. With that, I think the presentation ends with questions, and we'll open the floor for questions and answering first the discussion chat box here. And I just want to say one thing. The encroachment, it's a so the sidewalk apparently was built sometime in the past. We don't have confirmation, and we can't say 100% sure that the sidewalk is on private property. It just appears to be based on the information we have today. Again, and for sure, in advanced design phases, we will confirm if the existing sidewalk is within somebody's property. We'll address that issue by acquiring the proper right-of-way to make sure that the sidewalk is within the public right-of-way. But that's what it appears from the information we have today. The information we have today is not survey grade. It's based on GIS information.
Ronnie, thank you so much for making that clarification.
No problem.
To go back through the chat, I'm going back to, looks like Mark was the first question, and Daniel answered that. For segment 1, it starts at that Chase Street Dairy Pack and then goes to the loop. And yes, you'll get a copy of the PowerPoint. Teresa, I think, was talking about segment 1 as well, about parking disappearing. Teresa, do you want to expand on that?
Yes, I just noticed, I think it's the Pilgrim's Pride building, the one that I think has the overhead bridge. It appeared that there were cars parked on the grass on the side of the street. So people are already pinched for parking over there, and then you have those parking spaces. They look like they're slant parking spaces on the other side of the street. And so my question is, where will those folks park if we do this?
Part of that may be parking for convenience and proximity rather than parking because there's no parking elsewhere. Because there is a fairly large parking lot across the street, just north of the Pilgrim's Pride plant to the west of Barber, between that, I can't remember the name of that street, and 129. I'm just looking at the maps.
Does that belong to Pilgrim's Pride, that parking lot?
It must. Well, I can only assume it does because there's nothing else that's close by and it's full of cars. I'm just looking at it on Google Maps. So,
right. Okay.
But it's like to go from there all the way over, and so people may just be parking there for convenience. I don't know. That parking lot is, at least in this photo, which was a daytime photo, would be a third full. So.
I can just add part of the intention at the existing parking on the east side, where there is the parallel on the private property, would be to provide when you in detail design a protection measure to ensure there's adequate offset to the facility and the parking.
Is there any information, I don't know of any, that's why I'm asking too, about what was seen or researched about separated bike lanes on either side of the road, one on opposite lanes of travel versus together on one side of the road? Has there been any research done about that, about safety?
Yeah, there has been some. I think it'd be a little bit too much to get into right now, but there's some documentation we can provide on that. But in a space constrained corridor, I will say that giving a two-way does give you some efficiencies as you have one buffer instead of two.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
But it does take additional careful detailing to match in terms of safety. So closer look at intersections as well as signing and striping too.
I had a question is, what I've seen in other countries is they often use color to indicate where the pedestrians should walk and where the bicycles should go. So if you're in Amsterdam, for example, or Germany, they use red. So red is where pedestrians are, and non-red or whatever the other color is for bikes. And there's additional signage, but it's an easy visual cue. So I don't know if that's ever been done in the States. Because there is that potential. Bikes are going to be going pretty fast down Barber, particularly if you have cyclists who are trying to get north of town, who are, more competitive kind of cyclists. They may stay in the road as well, but in any case, I just wondered if that had been done or considered.
I think that would be a consideration. I think oftentimes it's the difference between asphalt and concrete gives you that visual difference. Other times, if it's a concrete bikeway facility, you can use colored concrete to get that. But I think our intention as well as at conflict points is to use directional indicators to clearly separate users and try to minimize conflicts.
Good.
And I just want to add as well that the design, except for at an intersection where you have to be where pedestrians and bicyclists have to be on the same level, the same grade, that there would actually be a grade separation between the two. So you would have a difference in materials, and you would also have a difference in height. So it'd be pretty evident where
Great.
bicyclists are.
Great. That's really good. Steve, this question for you. Remind me, what are the tentative plans around Newton Bridge Road? Because right now this kind of goes out there and then ends at Dairy Pack Road, and there's nothing there. It doesn't even go to Terrapin. So,
but it will go to general time. But yes, I also am curious about this.
In terms of prioritization, I remember something vaguely that there would be something tentatively planned along Newton Bridge Road, or am I remembering that right?
Right. So that was a potential for the TAD, I believe, and then of course we have the Vincent Drive connection that's going to be happening with T-SPOS money. So I believe Newton Bridge was tagged as something to be completed with. Oh, great, the context there. So there you go. Says it all.
Okay. Because as is, it kind of looks like Greenway to nowhere, but given that context, I think that's really important for folks to know about, that it's part of a larger, longer term plan to make these connections, which are really important for those neighborhoods north of town.
That's right.
I just want to add that both General Time and Terrapin are super supportive of multi-use paths on Newton Bridge Road.
I didn't want to miss any of these other chat questions as well. And I know that we've got more live questions, but so that we get through some of these, Mark had also asked, speaking of intersections, when we looked at one of those about the slip lanes, do we want to talk about that a little bit more and pull up one of those intersection designs?
Is there an intersection in specific that you're thinking about, Onita?
Mark, do you remember?
Yeah, it was Onita, wasn't it?
I'm muted. Yeah, Onita, eastbound out of Barber, southbound Barber.
And there's an existing slip lane there.
Correct. Yeah.
And
It
one of the
might
considerations,
be an opportunity to get rid of that or to rethink that. Is that something that's really needed? Maybe there are reasons in terms of truck traffic or something, but you know.
yeah, we were looking at some truck movements there and trying to introduce what was possible within the space. But
Mhm.
the moment you do accommodate a truck around just a radius without a slip lane,
Mm-hmm.
you end up out with a really big radius. So you kind of defeat the purpose.
Yeah, and
That would be something that would be looked into at the next stage in terms of providing turning movements and exhibits with those detailed out. But
yeah, and with a multi-use path, obviously that obviates a lot of the concerns around that slip lane. You know, so.
yep. And this is better than a typical, given it's a stop condition, so it's not a free flow slip lane like typical intersections you'd see.
Is it?
I think if we did have one at a signal, we'd also want to introduce a no right on red or some other enhancements to it to make those safe as possible.
Okay.
I believe that's all of the chat questions, so feel free to add in anything else.
Yeah, I had a question on that section 4. There are, if you go to the Jalisco Market, the quick car wash, the Shell station, it's basically one giant seamless entrance. It's, basically cars can enter and exit anywhere along there. Is that something that's going to be addressed by this? It looks like maybe yes. Thank you. Yeah,
Yes, that is something that is addressed because you have the center turn lane on the intersection, so you need your footprint of the roadway to widen up to accommodate that third lane. But so we recognize that having a giant concrete apron is not safe for people walking. And if you go towards the exploratory route for people biking in that area, so we took that as an opportunity to put in the curb extension there and formalize those entrances.
Okay. And I'm assuming that's not changing anything about the current Shell station, which is on the west, what's on the top of the screen there, top left corner.
Correct.
That may be something in the Prince Corridor Committee work we've been, thinking about and may address. Hopefully might be able to address. But thank you. That's great.
I have 2 questions, and then I want to see if there's any other commissioners who have questions or comments who haven't had a chance to speak yet. My first one is how wide are we talking about for the multi-use path widths? Can you restate that?
So the shared use path is shown only, like in the preferred design, it's really only shown in a couple of places. For the majority of the corridor, we're showing the 2-way separated bike lane, which is going to be 10 feet wide. We can, if there is like a utility pole that really needs to stay in place and it's pretty close to being able to fit within that buffer that we're showing, we can narrow that 2-way bike lane down to 8 feet for a short period of time. So that would be shown typically at 10 foot wide, and then the sidewalk at 10 foot wide. And then the shared use path in the exploratory phase, that exploratory phase for phase 4, that's shown as only being 10 feet wide with the recognition that you already have an existing sidewalk on the other side of the street. And then up at the Dairy Pack intersection where it tapers, because that's kind of the end of the 2-way separated bike lane, we're going back to a shared use condition at that intersection. And I would have to double check the dimension on that. But I believe that that's actually there because there's a little bit more flexibility with the right of way you have on the corners of that intersection.
Yeah, the goal there would, to get at least 12 feet at each corner to allow travel in any direction once you arrive.
Gotcha, thank you. And then as far as preferred route, is that Tool's recommendation? Is that Tool and staff? Where does this come from?
Ronnie, do you want to speak to this a little bit more?
Sure. This is definitely our initial staff and consultant looking at available budget, impact, and weighing options, pros and cons. But that's a recommendation from the department.
Thank you for that clarity. And now I just want to make sure that our other Athens in Motion folks have a chance to comment or say something. Roswell, did you have any questions or thoughts about this project that you'd like to get out?
I don't.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. James, have you had a chance to ask your questions or make your comments?
I think it all looks good. I don't have any questions about it.
Okay, you were a little quiet there, but I think you said that you were good and you didn't have any questions. Okay, Craig, any thoughts, questions?
It looks great. I mean, it looks like we're making good progress. I'm excited to see something like I use that area frequently myself, so it'd be great to have something over there. And I appreciate the work everybody's doing to see it happen.
All right. I think our other commissioners have had a chance to speak. Final thoughts before we decide how to proceed?
If I may add one thing,
Sure.
I know this was mentioned earlier on the presentation. Just want to point out that in this location, and the reason why we're going into acquiring more properties to maintain this ditch here. Just want to point out that the drainage ditch here is an enhanced drainage ditch that was built, and if you can see, this is a little transparent. You can see the check dams and the subsurface in this ditch. There is engineered soils that treats stormwater when it's running through it, and that's our objective, is to maintain this. This was built not more than 10 years ago, and the investment, we would like for it to stay, and therefore that's why we are preserving this area. So if you wonder why, we may not have talked a lot about it, but I just want to bring that up.
Thanks, Ronnie. Thanks for that context. Yeah, I can see why we wouldn't want to mess with that.
I did have one question about the area across from Habitat. That parking lot with the dock building, is anything done with the curb on that side? I know that it's not where the trail would be, but it's similar to the car wash area, I believe.
Am I in the right vicinity here? Is it next to
Yes.
the coffee place, this location?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the entry drive for Active and the coffee place.
Yeah, just north of the railroad tracks there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe that we, and it might not show up necessarily on this, but I believe that we have begun to identify how, you would only have two defined entrances. They kind of have some planters out there right now, and outdoor seating is what it seems like on Google Street View, which may or may not hold now that it's pandemic life. But we have identified how you can narrow and kind of formalize those, because when you put in that curb, that would provide you an opportunity to do so.
And I don't.
Thank you.
Okay. One more thing to mention, and this could been included in the construction cost estimate, embedded in the construction part. However, coordination with CSX often is costly and should be identified with a level of magnitude separate than the construction cost. We have not mentioned it, and again, in the work session presentation, the numbers may change reflecting that cost. I just realized that in the cost estimate, it may not have reflected that cost. It should be somewhere between 100 to 2.5 $250,000 usually for installation, coordination, and we know this line is very active, so any construction within this area will require flagging and coordination.
Thank you, Ronnie. Okay, so it's almost 5:15, and I think that we're going to have to do a special called session. Should we go ahead and plan for that in 2 weeks, March 9th, Tuesday?
Can I ask a quick question? So in the other ones we've done, we've been presented with various alternatives, and so what we're voting on is the alternative that we like the best. This is just one alternative, it's just the preferred design. So is what we are voting on just whether yes or no, or are we we would want to have more explanation? I mean, that was the opportunity here, I guess. But are we is this just an up or down vote on one design? Ronnie, I guess I'm asking you.
That's a great question, Jake. Thank you.
Call it Ronnie. It was muted.
Sorry about that. Yes, we are asking to confirm that the conclusion we arrived to based on the matrix we looked at with the designers is something you support. Now, it is within your ability to vote that you don't like what is proposed and go back to the presentation and tell us what alternative you would like to see for what section. And from a planning perspective and the professionals in this industry, they support having a continuous typical section across all 3 or even 4 segments. But as was discussed earlier, the exploratory segment between Prince and Boulevard, we called it that way because we acknowledge that if we build anything within that area that impacts the existing right-of-way beyond the existing sidewalk, will be in the front steps of a lot of residential properties. And we did not, the objective for this project is to look at Boulevard to Chase. The Prince Avenue section, or the section between Prince to Boulevard, we did not want to ignore it. And it was identified to be improved with shared facilities, meaning that the share rows and signage and so on. And so we wanted to enhance that. It was mentioned in the recommended option back when I believe Barber Street was discussed as part of the Chase Street planned project, planned corridor. So we're just following up with that segment. We did not want to add that. And the consultants here were going forward with presenting as the preferred concept to have multi-use facilities on segment number 4. We asked them not to show it at this time. This would be a separate project, would require a lot more public engagement specifically for that segment. As it was discussed before, that we are not building a multi-use path in that area. Again, like I said, it's your choice to review the presentation, review the options, the matrix we followed, and give us your recommendations. We did not want to spend a lot of money putting plots together, and we only representing what the design team recommending forward. And again, if you disagree with it, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And again, we'll open questions. And from now until we meet again, please ask questions by emails. We'll ask those to the tool engineer group and the professionals in this field, and try to get us the best answers to meet the expectations, high expectations that we have.
Ronnie, one thing to add to that, and keep in mind, Barber Street really was the first identified multi-use path, one of these projects. And earlier on, we've made some different recommendations from what was recommended for Cherokee and Riverbend, et cetera. But Barber, from the beginning, we knew was going to be bike and ped facilities. So in previous votes, I know we've kind of put that Complete Streets context to the vote to say, do we want to add more money to this project to add in, bikes as well as peds? In this case, we already knew we were going to spend the money on both. And so what we did was we found that preferred design that fits it. That's not to say that you can't come back and say, well, you have a preferred design, but we also have some recommendations otherwise. That's perfectly fine. But that's a little bit of why this is different from some of those previous votes.
I'd just like to say that, my gut reaction to the whole presentation is very positive. I think, I think you all have done a terrific job of, going all the way down that long road and seeing all the problems and possibilities. I would just really like to have the opportunity to read through the information again and then drive it and walk it a bit, before I say, yeah, this is great, let's just support it. But I mean, I think that I think I'm probably going to support it, but I just want to be sure.
Absolutely. As we talk about timeline, Ronnie, when is the work session scheduled for this at the moment?
Thank you, Stephen, for that question. It is next, it's March 9th. Sorry, it's not next Tuesday,
So
it's the Tuesday after.
With that in mind, I think we can do one of two things. We can either have a very short review and we come back at the end of by the end of or middle of next week with a vote. Or we could certainly consider talking to the managers and pushing out the work session a month, depending on what y'all want to do.
I personally am okay with a short review period. I don't see, I mean, if I had to put this to an up or down vote right now, I would just say yes. I do want to talk about our budget a little bit and what we're thinking will be left over and what we want to do with that. So that would be something I would add to the agenda of that discussion.
Okay. All right, so we need to get in a meeting before the March 9th work session. So depending on staff's availability and y'all's availability, we could do Thursday, March 4th, or I don't know if we have time to do something on March 2nd, and that's a voting meeting for the mayor and commission. Maybe we could do it early. So thoughts?
We can make whatever work. I think that Tuesday might be out because of the voting session. Staff's going to be wrapped up in the green room there. But if we wanted to do it before the policy meeting on Wednesday, or if you wanted to do it on Thursday afternoon, I think either one of those days could work.
Oh, that's a good idea to stack those two things. Are y'all available? Is the rest of the Athens Motion Commission available on Wednesday, March 3rd at 4 p.m.? Is there anyone who knows they're not available, because we will need quorum for that? Okay. So it looks like we're going to do this Wednesday, March 3rd, 4 p.m. special meeting.
Is 30 minutes enough? Can we do 4:30? Or do we need an hour?
Are you saying that you would prefer, like, if it could be 4:30, that would be helpful for you, Aaron?
I would, but if other people think if y'all think it would take a while, then I understand 4. I just busy work day, but I can be there at 4.
I'm fine with either.
All right. Let's try that. Let's go for 4:30. and we'll keep the discussion as brief as we can. I mean, I guess we can exchange thoughts over email too. I think that's okay. Yeah, Stephen's nodding, so I don't think we're breaking any rules there.
This group
Well,
does
you
like
know.
to talk.
What? What, Mark?
This group does like to talk.
We don't get to talk enough. We don't get to
That's why
talk
I'm
about
worried 10
grants
hours
and
is
things.
enough, but you know, we'll try.
All right, so we're gonna do Wednesday, March 3rd, 4:30. Let me make sure I get that on my calendar for a special call meeting. And with that said, I think that we can bid adieu to Tool and Ronnie, and we thank y'all for this presentation. It's really exciting to see Barber Street come together. As I mentioned in the comments, I was on this area 3 out of the past 4 days. It gets a lot of use. I'm excited to see these concepts.
Cool. Thank you very much, Sarah, Savannah, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
having.
guys. Bye.
Thanks.
you all.
Enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Make this the rest of the staff update really brief if you need me to. Okay. And Ronnie, I don't even know if we have any big updates on Cherokee or Jefferson River Road, but I can give you a quick update on Riverbend. So Riverbend vote is happening next week. The last that we heard is that UGA has become more amenable to right-of-way usage in that section between College Station and Riverbend Parkway. And so they are, they're looking to agree with a multi-use section up there, as well as a multi-use section down at the very end from Lakeside Drive to South Millage, kind of getting that connection between the apartments there and Millage Avenue. So I believe at the moment that is the CDO that Commissioner Edwards is going to put forward, and we'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes from there.
Stephen, does that mean that they're going to get rid of the bike lanes?
Right. So we would, and Ronnie can correct me if I'm wrong, but what it looks like is the bike lanes headed toward that are College Station bound. So I guess that's eastbound. Anyway, College Station bound would be removed. The Millage bound bike lanes would then be increased to be a actual standard 5-foot width, because right now they're substandard. And then you would expect that the cyclist heading toward College Station would use the multi-use path option. The segment that adds transitional issues as well, and so that has to be incorporated in design. But that's how it stands right now to be used. Ronnie, does that sound about right? Yes, Stephen. I think you covered pretty much most of it. The segment from Millage to Lakeside Drive, it lacks a portion of a sidewalk, a big portion of a sidewalk. I'm sorry, a big portion of a bike lane, substandard bike lane, and therefore we're adding. You know, we advise that if we do a CDO and we add that segment, let's go ahead and make sure the bike traffic bounding from College to Millage be complete. So meaning, let's go ahead and close that gap and make sure we have a bike lane for these bikers who are taking the bike lane in the roadway. That segment is so far been talked about adding like Stephen said, and the CDO adding a multi-use path on the west side, and taking out the substandard, if any, of bike facility in that area. And obviously that doesn't fix everything. If you're heading toward College Station, you start on a multi-use path, you transition to a 4-foot bike lane, and then you transition back to a multi-use path when you get to Riverbend Parkway. So we're certainly aware of the shortcomings, and that will, absolutely still be a future project. It's sort of the best of the worst, I guess, that we have right now.
Yeah, not to put too much on you guys, because I know you're working with the commission, but do you have some sort of like rough outline of what this looks like for us so we can wrap our heads around it, so we know what they're doing, what they're voting on?
Sure. So I can send over I think I'm allowed to send over the CDO let me make sure that's okay first. It's something that Commissioner Edwards is putting together with our help. So if I get the okay from Blaine to share that, I'll send over the concept drawing. To actually, between now and then, the concept looks really familiar because it is basically multi-use path option alternative 1, but only for the portion from Lakeside Drive to South Millage and from College Station to Riverbend Parkway. So you can look back at multi-use path alternative 1 and think about that geographically, and then just know that the other section between between Riverbend Parkway and Lakeside Drive is just remaining untouched.
Okay, thank you. That's a lot to process. All right, great.
And it could be that by the time we get to the voting session, they have something completely different. We don't really know. So I'm interested to see what happens.
Okay, yeah. Well, thank you for working with the commission, and thank you for working with us. And I know it's a lot of voices and a lot of opinions, and we appreciate y'all. Yeah.
Great.
Any other staff updates?
The other item on our to-do list is to provide Athens in Motion with the future paving program list. We're currently putting that together, and we had plans to share that with you this meeting. That did not work out. We had some staffing level issues, and however, we're hopeful that in the next meeting, we'll be able to provide that information ahead of the meeting and dedicate 10 minutes to talk about the list proposed so far. Again, this is a proposed list, has to be approved by Mayor and Commission. We may find out some overlap with some future projects that may push or take out a project from the list. Also, it's selected based on the ratings of these pavements, and there might be some progressed deterioration that we're not aware of since 2019, and it may add a road or two to this list. So that being said, that's all the updates we have. I don't know, Stephen. Okay, we're good.
Great. Well, thank y'all. Thank you, Ronnie. We're gonna move on in our last 29 minutes of this meeting. My report, I'm gonna try and breeze through this pretty quickly. I have reached out. I have talked to the mayor and Jean Spratlin about Carol's vacancy and our wish for 2 additional members on the Athens in Motion Commission. I'm going to skip the discussion with you, GA, for the moment. The budget, I sent an email to Blaine, but that was just yesterday, asking to advise us as to our next steps, what we should do. We submitted the budget. Carol submitted the budget back in December for $12,000. And let's see, anything I can breeze through really quickly. Firefly alternates. Thank you, Mark and Aaron, for speaking last week. I can tell that the mayor and commission were definitely paying attention to what you had to say. I know we have potentially some other Athens in Motion commissioners who might speak.
So I want to ask a question about that.
Yeah.
So we've had 2 Athens in Motion commissioners. Was that at a work session?
It was agenda setting.
Okay. And then, so were these commissioners speaking as members of Athens in Motion or as private citizens who happen to be Athens in Motion commissioners?
I'll say that I identified myself as both a T-Splosh commissioner and Athens in Motion, but I was speaking on behalf of myself as a resident, a citizen, because I assume that they know how Athens in Motion feels too, because we wrote the letter.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I said I would speak at this meeting, and I'm happy to do so, but I want to make sure that I'm wearing the correct hat when I do that. So am I going to be speaking on behalf of Athens in Motion, or am I speaking on behalf of myself, a private citizen and taxpayer who is on the commission?
Teresa, I'd say it could go either way, particularly that you're vice chair and that I as the chair have already spoken. So it's really I think if you were to speak as vice chair, it might be useful to share your draft or your points. That could be helpful. But I think that it's really what you would like to do. I've struggled because I also wanted to speak personally about it, and I haven't done that exactly. So yeah, it could be either way.
All right, well, I think what I'm going to do is speak on behalf of Athens in Motion, and I'm going to keep it pretty brief. What I want to do is look at the public comments that have come in and just sort of summarize what those are saying to us, and just emphasize that Athens in Motion is primarily concerned with safety and ease of use and comfort. But I'm not going to like weigh in on anything else.
Yeah, that sounds perfect, Teresa. Thank you. I know some other folks were considering speaking, and I will confirm that with y'all. I think the agenda will release Friday, and sign up will be at that point.
Yeah, Lauren, if I may, this is Craig. I was just going to say, you know, if, I think you had, or I'd sort of understood it to make sense that we spread ourselves out. So, I mean, I can just be available whenever, you know, if we kind of say 2 at a time is good, and we just sort of have a rotation or more, just kind of, I'm flexible in that way. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I was a little concerned that we're overwhelming them, you know, and my buddy Alan Jones basically said that you know that we were really taking up a lot of speaking slots. So I just want to share that with you all.
So I'm going to point out that there were 20 speaking slots and only 9 were filled. So.
Also, Ellen Jones has been known to take up a lot of speaking slots himself, I've noticed.
Oh.
Squeaky wheel gets grease.
All right, moving on. And yeah, the mayor and commission will vote on the Firefly routes this week or next week, along with Riverbend, as I understand it. I do want to make sure that we take a look at the proposed work plan, which is linked in the agenda, and I'm going to pull it up and share my screen because maybe we can check this off the list. The work plan, as y'all will remember from last year, it's a very brief document. It's only concerned with policy stuff and stuff that's going to potentially come the way of the mayor and commission, so maybe budget items. This is not all the work that we're going to do. So you see that it's pretty brief. The complete streets policy is still on there. We're hoping to wrap that up. We have scheduled 2 meetings in 1 month, so we can move that a little bit faster. Intersection policy, we had a discussion about this in December, and then considerations for small sidewalk projects. So this might be for neighborhood and maybe projects that don't fit the Athens in Motion plan in the sense that they are very small, but that a neighborhood would have the option to, well, that we would help those neighborhoods out. There's more to be sussed out there. Any comments? All right, I will entertain a motion to approve our work plan for 2021, which I will submit to the mayor.
Maybe you should add an item, just, other business that comes before the commission.
We didn't add that last year. This is very narrowly focused. We have a lot more we're going to do, like figuring out our tier 1 projects and how we're going to go about that. So this is not comprehensive of our work.
All right. Well, then I'll be happy to make a motion to approve the work.
Teresa.
I'll second it.
Okay, Aaron, second. All those in favor of our work plan, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. All right, we voted on something today. Hooray. Okay, I did have Roswell, through Roswell's work, I was able to talk with Allison pretty soon after our last meeting, and I shared points with you all in that email, and I've been meaning to follow up with her, but haven't had a chance to. But as I said in that conversation, they hopefully they will be able to share their kind of bike ped vision for campus, and we'll get more information on that, as well as I did express that we were interested in whomever they choose as their next vendor for their shareable, their electric bike program, because I know that they're looking to find a replacement for Gotcha, and hopefully also they're keeping ACC in the loop on that, so expressed interest there. So hopefully we'll have more information at the next meeting, but it was a very good conversation. And again, thank you to Roswell for setting that up. And I'm sorry I have to go through this so quickly.
Can I ask, what is the status of the campus bikes right now? Like, are they just don't exist? They're gone? Okay.
That is correct. So we got an email saying that, you know, that they were going away temporarily, but they are really gone. And that's, I know that's unfortunate because it took
And I'll just
years.
add, I'm sorry, Lauren, and I'll just add really quick. I know we're breezing through, but yeah, when Gotcha left abruptly like that, you know, it caught UGA by surprise as well. And, you know, we were looking into our contract, trying to see what we can do, you know, as it relates to the contract that they have, the obligations they have with us. So we are, as Lauren mentioned, looking for another suitor, if you will. And as far as a comprehensive bike ped plan for all of campus, we don't have that. So what we do when there is construction or anything that happens on campus, we include that into the plans at that time. So that's currently what's happening. And I spoke with several people at Georgia about that. It's not there. So that's what we do right now.
And the bike couldn't have been a worse time to roll it out. It was in March, a week before everything shut down. Literally, I remember talking with Jason about it. It was just the worst timing it could have been with the pandemic.
Yeah, I know. Terrible timing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gotcha they really kept it rolling. They were really keeping the bikes charged. I noticed that, and providing sanitation supplies. So I'm disappointed because it seemed like that they were putting forth a lot of effort to keep those bikes in circulation.
Was it an economic decision for them? Okay.
It was. They just weren't getting any ridership because of campus being shut down all year.
All right. Well, Roswell, thank you for that context. I know, I guess I've seen like maps of campus and plans and stuff. So it's interesting. It's useful to know that there isn't like, say, a bike ped plan. Maybe it's just more of areas plan and that's useful to know. Okay, on to corridor committees. So we have Teresa on Atlanta Highway, then Mark on Prince Avenue, and we still need to figure out Lexington. So I will turn it over to you guys for a brief update.
Okay, well, the Atlanta Highway Corridor Story Map Survey tool is up and running, and it is mostly bug-free, although I will say it's hard to use from an iPhone. But anyway, I think, and I mean, it has a couple features that I don't like, and I've complained to Derek Doster about. And you know, who knows what's going to happen with those. But for the most part, I think job well done. And you know, hopefully people will use it and, you know, provide some feedback, which we need.
Teresa, how long is that comment period open?
I think it's through April 15th, but I could be wrong about that. But it's April. I know that. Might be April 1st, but I think it's April 15th.
I think it's the 19th.
So what now?
I think it's April 19th.
Oh, excellent. Even better. Okay.
Should I go next?
And Teresa,
I do have a. Go ahead,
I was
Stephen.
going to say it's constructive criticism, not a complaint. You did very good feedback on this.
Oh, you're saying I've given good feedback on this?
Yeah.
I've not been too big a pain in the you know what?
Not at all. Nope.
So it's great to have you guys on these corridor committees and having an Athens in Motion voice. If you ever get to a point where you feel like, oh, it would be great, we need to have a letter or some official recommendation, or I want to bring something forth and that's appropriate, please feel free to do so as you serve in this role. What you got for us, Mark?
Yeah, I think thanks for saying that. And that as soon as you said it, I thought we could really use a letter from Athens in Motion to the Prince Avenue Corridor Committee. So I think it's a good group. I've attended 3 meetings now, I think so far, two meetings, and the third one is coming up on Wednesday. And so GDOT has been going through their plan, and essentially they have basically said that there's no way to add bike lanes along the entire corridor, and pushing back on that somewhat. And we really have no control over the Millage to Loop section. Going from Millage to Pulaski, obviously there's potential to do a road diet there, to add bike lanes, to do other things. There has been excellent support from the business community. The folks doing the huge new Prince 100 or 100 Prince Avenue are supportive of things like a road diet. So are Jessica Green, who owns the Grit, and some others. She's been in touch with other business owners. So there's some support among the business owners for doing that. Businesses, in other places where you slow traffic down, businesses get noticed more and they get more attention, and they really have designed 100 Prince to be more pedestrian centric. They're proposing a lot of pedestrian improvements, which are really quite good. What we have tried to get, and what hopefully we're going to have a presentation soon, Stephen, I'm not sure when that's going to be, but looking at the Millage to Pulaski and what are our options for bike lanes or bike enhancements, and we'll see where that goes. But I think a letter from Athens in Motion, if you are supportive, saying that we should do everything we can to make it a complete street and follow that complete streets policy in that segment from Millage to Pulaski, which the city controls, I think that might be a good time to do that.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Do you, Mark, do you want to start a letter?
Yeah, yes, I said that. Oh, great. I just got myself another. Yeah, I'll I've been sort of immersed in this, and I've been reading all the old reports and traffic studies and stuff like that. So yeah, I can look at that.
Thanks. Can you provide, I'm sorry, I just want to ask this really, I'll try and be brief, but can you provide what reasons GDOT is giving for not doing bike lanes besides that they are in charge? Because I know that there have been studies and stuff over the years, and I'm just trying to understand.
I mean, basically, they talk about the traffic volume being such that they can't narrow the lanes. They don't want to get rid of left turn lanes. They don't want to reduce lanes. They don't want to remove parking because the hospital doesn't want to do anything that would narrow the lanes or narrow the traffic corridor. Yeah, so, and that decision was made before we even started with the corridor. There was never really any formal presentation or rationale that I'm aware of. That was a decision. If you look at the Prince Avenue Corridor report from 2018, I think it was, there was language added later on that said basically road diet, isn't a good idea. If you go back to 2016 or 18, if you look at the statewide GDOT bicycle safety or bicycle report, it specifically mentions Prince Avenue Corridor as one that should be a priority for, multimodal transport and for complete streets. So, that's what they said 2 years ago. Now coming back and saying no. So, it's not surprising. Whenever I talk about how can we slow traffic down, because that's a big concern on Prince Avenue, particularly near the health science campus where UGA is, and then as you cut by the hospital, there's often very high speed traffic. There's often very high speed near the president's house because the road widens out there and people just fly through there. So And every time I say, well, what are the tools for reducing traffic speed? And it's sort of crickets. They are going to be building some pedestrian refuges, what we think of as traffic islands in the middle, and removing some what's currently sort of wide open left turn lane. They're going to be making pedestrian refuges. There are a bunch of signalized mid-block crossings that are going to be added. So, I mean, there are some really good things that are going to come out of this. I don't want to be too negative, but the bicycle was just like, until we started pushing back, there are a couple of us who are advocating for this. That just wouldn't have happened. So I think our main focus, and I think our best chance, is between Village and Pulaski. And then I think we have a good argument because look, Doherty's got 3-lane 2 years ago. It's been fine. The world did not collapse on itself when that happened. And I was actually biking across there today, and I looked, and there's actually potential, and this is a whole other idea, for removing the north side of the street on-street parking, and when it does get restriped at some point in the future, 2, 3, 4 years from now, adding bike lanes on Doherty as well, because it's quite a wide road and there's very little parking that's utilized. It's all striped for parking, but there's not a whole lot being used. So anyway, that's a separate discussion, but the main point is that 3-laning worked just fine. It didn't cause any massive problems. There's some things you might have to do, like if you 3-lane, you might have to eliminate a left turn from eastbound Prince onto Pulaski in order to have a straight through lane there, and then encourage people and create an opportunity to turn onto Child that's currently kind of a half-assed left turn lane there, and so create a proper turn lane, so encourage traffic. I live on Pulaski, so I mean I would be hurting myself by recommending this, but I think it's might be the right thing to do ultimately if we do 3-lane that section. So.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And I don't know if this is official, but I thought that section of Doherty that got 3-laned and it's got the wide parking spaces, I feel like that was a phased approach. Like the bike lanes would be added later so that people wouldn't think it was 3-laned for bike lanes. Because we've run into some issues with that, even when roads were not 3-lane for bike lanes. They were,
right.
like what is it? Hawthorne,
yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Lexington. We still don't have someone on Lexington as far as I know, and I think it's because they're in the morning.
So that's all. Are you able to do that or no? Real quick before you go. And you're muted.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, what time in the morning, which days? I don't have any information.
So the times that they had been meeting were Thursday morning. I think they'd met at Thursdays at 10. So I can actually do that.
Anytime my schedule's open on a Thursday at 10 that they're meeting, I don't mind going. I just won't know.
Yeah, the next one is March 11th at 10 o'clock. So it's a Thursday.
Yeah, and right now I have a meeting, so I can't remove that.
Yeah, so I can do it.
Jake.
It's actually easier for me when it's earlier in the day.
It is. It's easier for you.
Yeah, and I can hold my schedule. I can have that as a standing meeting. I don't know.
Is it monthly, Jake?
It's monthly, right, Stephen?
I'm sorry. So what was that?
Corridor meeting is monthly?
Yes, that's right.
And if you want to add me to it, Jake, so we can switch off sometimes, or however you want to do it, we just be in contact. And like I said, I'll make as many as I can.
Sounds good.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great, y'all. And I know, we're a very active commission. We have a lot of things going on, and we have our hands in a lot of pots, especially Jake, who's on 2 commissions and nonprofits.
Just going to a meeting is not a big deal, especially if it's during the day for me. It's when I have to, when I have actual responsibilities besides just reporting back what happens. I can easily be on the way, and I'm super interested in it because I live like Roswell right off Morton Road, so Lexington Road is my backyard for better or worse.
Okay, well, thank you for that. That actually does segue into our committee discussion. Craig, you had brought up recruiting people to serve on our committees. Do you want to talk about that briefly?
I was just thinking about it. Thanks, Lauren. And just, I was noticing that it seemed like I just couldn't remember our discussion around this because I have a memory of us forming the committees and kind of getting a sense of who was going to serve on them. And I could not remember what we had said regarding non-commissioners serving on committees, but it sort of made sense to me that that could and should be an option because there are plenty of residents in our community that have wonderful contributions they could make and they could join committees. It's a great way to educate the community about what's going on, and it's a good recruitment tool. So I was just wanting clarification as far as was that an option for us to have people outside of the commission to serve on committees, and I was assuming it was, and if so, how might we go about getting some folks, some of our friends, some people that we know on board in terms of serving and empowering them to be part of what we're doing.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up because yes, we absolutely should have people on committees. I think if it weren't for COVID, we might have recruited some more people. And so, y'all, I mean, reach out to your networks, and it's also, I think we should let folks know they don't have to have expertise, like just joining and asking questions. I mean, like we've got data experts, and you guys are great, and I'm sure that you know, that your expertise is important, but also having another set of eyes, someone to ask questions is useful. And in policy, same thing. It's just, I think it's just a little rough with COVID, but we need some extra hands and eyes. And I don't know how long it will be before we fill Carol's vacancy or get to more commissioners, but I imagine it's going to be a bit. So, you know, start reaching out to folks. Yeah, so to our other committees, Roswell, you have given us some insight about UGA, and I shared an update, and I don't think there was anything else there, but let me know. Grants and data. What you got?
Nothing to report. We couldn't find any place to apply to, basically, that was a fit that had funding. We had some conversations, as I covered the last time, with folks at the state office, governor's office of highway safety, and it just was very clear they weren't interested in funding what we were interested in doing. So.
Okay, next. Policy. We came up with the work plan. We're talking about considerations for small sidewalk funding. We are also starting conversations about, we haven't talked about any specific projects, but like what we will consider, how we will go about selecting the next tier 1 projects, keeping in mind that T-SPLOS 2023, that group will be formed at the end of this year, and the deadline for project proposals will be at the end of this year. So that's absolutely something that we will need to come up with a list for. So, you know, talking together, working with Stephen and Daniel, we're trying to strategize an approach which we will bring to you all. We're also trying to wrap up the complete streets policy so we can move on to these other things like intersections and whatnot. Policy, did I cover everything? Okay, I'm gonna say that's a yes. All right, education and communications, open streets event, Teresa.
Well, unfortunately, we've had to just put it on hold because we can't get a permit. And even if we could get a permit, certain grumpy Athens in Motion in motion commissioners said they wouldn't even help out. So, so anyway, we're on hold, and that's fine. And we'll pick it up whenever COVID is more or less in the review.
Yeah, that's sad. But Teresa, thank you for your hard work on that. Maybe it's just an extra year to plan, and it's going to be extra successful when the pandemic's over. People are going to be so excited to get out and about. It's going to be the latest new event in Athens. So,
Be great, because they've got leisure services. They're a very energetic group, as I'm sure Daniel can appreciate. And they've got a lot of contacts in the community, and they had some wonderful ideas for socially distant activities that could be done outside. But, again, it's a matter of getting the permit, and no permits are being issued. End of discussion. So it'll happen when it happens.
at least the decision is made for us, I guess. Okay. Other stuff, T-Splost. So Aaron and I haven't had a T-Splost meeting, so there's nothing to report. It was canceled. Jake, do you have any updates from the Greenway Commission that you want to share?
No, except to say, so we recently redid who our ex officios are, and I'm pretty sure that Athens in Motion Commission is now an ex officio. So officially, you'll be on the agenda, and if you're able to make it, then that's cool. If not, we also have me, and so that's it.
Can you remind us when your meetings are?
It's the third Tuesday from 4 to 6. And it doesn't usually go till 6.
Thank you, Jake. Any other business announcements, stuff y'all want to bring up before this group? Wow, I think we breezed through everything, and it's only 6:01. So we're only holding staff over an extra minute or two, thank goodness. All right, with that being said, our next meeting is on Wednesday, March 3rd, 30 minutes, 4:30. And then our regular meeting is on Tuesday, March 23rd from 4 to 6, right here on WebEx. And yeah, I guess I will entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
Jake first.
Second.
Third.
Fourth.
Fifth.
I object.
I know. I want to talk transportation stuff. We don't really get to talk about
You all objectionable.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. All right. See y'all shortly.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.